It seems I've washed up onto a sandy island, surrounded by forests in each direction. On this isolated piece of land, it is just myself and one single oak tree. I'm not sure who I am, what happened, or why I'm here. All I know is, I need to survive. I chopped down the tree I washed up next to with my bare hands, and then decided to cross from my island to the bank of the nearby mainland. After I made it to the other side, there was far more for me to explore. I made a crafting table, and I walked for a bit, trying to find somewhere suitable to make a little outpost to help me survive the first night. Before too long, I found myself a spot that I liked, a flat area in the forest that seemed suitable to make the first human marks on this land. I placed down a crafting table, made myself a wooden pickaxe, and then made my way over to the nearby mountain to collect some cobblestone. I got myself enough stone to make a stone sword, pickaxe, axe, and shovel, as well as some extra stone to spare. At this point, I was unsure of how I wanted to make my outpost, so while I brainstormed ideas, I chopped down the nearby trees for wood, then expanded the dirt platform I wanted to build on. Once I had done that, I put up some wood pillars to start on my shelter. I wanted to make a sort of ruined tower that seemed to be abandoned for many years, forgotten to deal with the elements on its own. So I put up some walls and tried to build a lookout tower on top, but I wasn't satisfied with how things were looking. I tore down the walls and put them back up, but by now the sun was going down and I needed to take shelter for the night, before the darkness and its unknown had its chance to grip me. While inside the barely functioning outpost, I decided it was probably best to make myself productive, so I started to create a mine to try and gather some materials. I was hoping most to find some coal to lighten up the pitch black world I found myself in, and thankfully I was able to do just that. Now with torches in hand, I felt a little bit safer. The light scared away the darkness, in turn helping me create security in the new world. Not too long later, I found some iron ore, which I smelted into ingots back at the top of the outpost. I also put some less than perfectly functional stairs into the mine, as well as some trapdoors to keep me safe from falling down at the top. After a night of mining, I had gathered a nice bit of material, and as I made my way back up to the surface once day came, I was feeling ready to work on my tower some more. Waking up the next day, I knew what I needed to do. I needed to tear down the current tower and build it back up better. So I did. Over the course of the next 2 days, I took the time to build up a new structure, this time made of stone and gravel. There are multiple levels to the ruined tower I find myself in. The first floor and then the second floor, which serves as a platform that leads you to get to the top, which is an outlook deck. After I built everything up as night on day 3 came, I wanted to redo the mine I had started on, and as I started digging underground, I heard a startling sound. The sound was the rain. Something about this rain was violent and eerie. There were gusts of wind that sounded strong enough to shake and tear this barely standing structure down. Here I am inside the mines of a long-forgotten watchtower, dealing with the very nature that destroyed it. It was almost like at one time, this watchtower protected the people, keeping a lookout for intruders and mobs, but now it serves as a temporary shelter for the common traveler. The sun didn't peek its head out at the start of the 4th day. I was hoping that I could finally get out of this tower and start to find a home of my own, but the rain is a danger I don't want to face. So I figured instead of staying locked up in this tower with nothing to do, I would find something productive, so I decided to continue with the mine. It is said that deep below this world's surface there are riches, and only those with the strongest of wills can uncover them. So digging down seemed like a great idea to pass the time as the wind howled above. For the entire day, I went further and further below the surface. Soon the sounds of the rain became faint, and the sounds of the caves below took its place. Behind the walls of my mine were caverns filled with zombies and skeletons I wasn't yet brave enough to face, so I kept to myself and dug lower and lower. I'd come across the odd piece of iron, but nothing more valuable. Eventually, I hit lava, and that's when I knew I hit the core of the planet. So I dug around trying to find riches. But time passed, nothing was found, and it started to become day. I figured it was time to leave. Since the rain had cleared up for the time being, and day had broken over the horizon, I knew it was time to venture out and find a spot for me to settle. This tower did me well. It kept me alive through the first handful of days after I washed up on that small island, but it was time for something of my own. I knew that building a home would take days, so I came up with a different idea. Something else to keep me sheltered while I worked on my new home. First, I took out some pigs for their pork chops, so if I found myself getting into danger, at least I would have a way to keep myself healthy. I then made an effort to collect as much wool as I could before setting out in hopes to find the perfect spot for me to live. It didn't take much time before I found a place suitable for me to settle, a charming valley below a cliff. I was still concerned with collecting more wool though, so I ventured out further in hopes to find sheep. which I did with no problem, then headed back to the site of my new home. The reason for my wool gathering today was so that I could build myself a tent to at least keep me safe from some of the elements. So I started pitching my tent, but then I realized I still didn't have enough wool. But by this time, the sun was starting to set, and the dangers of the night were starting to rear their heads. But I knew that I needed to brave the night in order to keep myself safe. I went out into the wilderness and found a few more sheep, which allowed me to finish the pitching of my tent. Now all I had to do was furnish it with the things I would need most. The step down into the tent allows for a bit more headspace, as well as room for furnaces and crafting benches. I put in a floor, then a chest by where I'm planning on putting my bed. And to my misfortune, or luck depending on how you look at this situation, as I placed the last parts of my tent together, the wind and rain came back. I suppose I choose to believe it was luck that allowed me to create shelter before Mother Nature decided to show its wrath once again. Unfortunately, the rain is once again stopping me from making progress on my plans, but that's okay. The days go by quickly when you're busy, and it's rare you get the chance to take time to sit and have nothing to do. Being alone with your thoughts with no task to be done can be a good way to slow down and think. Be one with yourself with no distractions. Slowly, the loud pattering of rain on my tent became relaxing. Something that was once a source of fear was now helping me relax. Time stood still for a moment. Eventually, for the first time in 6 days, I fell asleep. Something about the rain stopping woke me up. The change of sound to silence was loud, but now it was night, and after spending the entire daylight hours resting, I had to go out into the darkness. In order to try and minimize danger, I used up my torches to light the surrounding area, to hopefully make the nights a little bit safer. This night though wasn't necessarily safer. I was attacked by many mobs, but I came out alive with the help of my food. I lit everything around me up during the night and then waited for day to come. It's been 1 week since I've been on this land, and once I stepped outside of my new tent, I was met with an intruder. It seems my effort to light things up was unsuccessful, and a creeper made it close to the place I felt was safe. The creeper blew up and left a crater in the land near my house. But while I was patching the hole back up, I was struck with a piece of inspiration. The hole in the ground reminded me of a fire pit, something I could use to keep warm at nights. So after I patched up the hole, I cleared out some more space to put in my new campfire. I realized putting the fire too close to my tent would probably be a mistake, as it could light my shelter on fire. So I moved away a bit and started digging a hole and filled it with cobblestone. I put in some chairs on 2 sides of the fire pit to sit on, and then went out to try and find some gravel so I could put in a pathway. I was able to find some wool for a bed, but I wasn't able to find enough gravel to finish my project. As the night came, I figured it was time to try out my new fire pit. So I lit the stone on fire, took a seat, and felt the warmth of the fire hitting my skin. It was nice. It was relaxing. I took a look around at the area surrounding me, thinking of the endless possibilities. I wasn't the creator of this land, but I had the power to turn it into anything I wanted. After a while, I put the fire out and walked back to my tent. I took a rest in my bed and slept through the night. With endless ideas pouring through my mind, I was excited to start the next day. Waking up, I had 2 goals for the day. I wanted to find the perfect spot to put the foundation of my house in, and I wanted to finish the pathway over to the campfire. I think that the area below the cliff will be the perfect place to put my home. So in order to prepare the area to start building, I needed to clear out the space. So I chopped down all of the trees. After I got the platform in, I went out to find some gravel in order to finish the pathway. I was able to find some in the side of a hill not too far out from my home base. Going back home, I was able to get some food from pigs for myself to cook later, and I got the pathway in. By now, it was night, so I used the last of my torches to light up some more of the surrounding area, then used some wood to cook my food I got earlier. After the food was done, I turned in for the night. Over the past few days, I've worked towards being ready to build my home, but the preparations have been taking a while. Finally today, I think that I'm ready to put the foundation of my home in, and I'll be able to start the process of having a nice place to live. Before I can start building though, I need to go out and find myself some coal. I've run out entirely and I will need some soon. So I took a walk out into the unknown world and found some spots with exposed coal. I collected what I could and came back home. I started to smelt some stone for my house, and I went over and started placing the first blocks of my home. Today, the goal was to just put in the foundation, no roof. I placed in the 4 walls, and as the sun went down, I still had some more work to do. I worked a little bit through the night and then was attacked by some mobs, almost taking me out, but I had some food to heal. I lit up a little more of the surrounding area, then went to sleep for the night. On day 10, my goal is to put in the roof of the house, but first I wanted to go out and find some more food since I'm only down to 1 pork chop. So I went out and found some pigs, then went back home to put the roof in. For the roof, stone is going to be the best. So I started the long process of installing it. It was quite simple really. Place the stairs, and then go up 1 block, then place more stairs. By nightfall, the roof wasn't completely in, so once again I worked into the night. This time though, I wasn't attacked too much. After the roof was done, I went back to my tent and cooked the food I got earlier in the day, then tried to go to bed. I was attacked twice during the night by zombies. I almost died once again, but the food I made was able to keep me healthy. Today, I wanted to finish off the exterior of the house, which shouldn't be too hard. After some consideration, I figured out where to put the ladder to the attic, and then I came up with a design for my room up there. On either side of the attic, there's a large window for me to look out of, as well as the small window off to the side. Then, there will be a small area for me to keep my valuables and a place to sleep. I needed to go out and grab sand and smelt it to fill in some of the windows. I did what I could decorating the house, but once again I'm out of coal. Tomorrow, I'm going to try and fully furnish it. While going to bed, once again I was attacked. I think that it'll be important to get armor tomorrow, and hopefully move into my new home. At the start of the day, I looked into my chest and realized I had 9 leather, which means I could make myself a leather chest plate, and that should help me survive any attacks. After this, I needed to go out and find myself some coal, so I could continue cooking any food I came across. So I went out into some more unexplored world, and was able to find a couple of veins of coal, which should last me a while. When I came back home, I put in the floor of my house, a border of oak wood logs with a soft white carpet in the middle. I tried to start decorating the interior to move in, but the inspiration hasn't struck for how I want everything to look. I was able to get a tree in the corner though. I went over to my tent for hopefully my last night sleeping outside. It was finally time to finish my new home and move in. I started by adding in chairs and a table by the window so that I could sit and eat and appreciate the world around me. I think this will be a great spot for me to take it slow and rest. Then I added in furnaces with ventilation so that I can cook my food and keep my home smoke free. This mostly completed my downstairs of the house. It's simple, but quite cozy. So I moved upstairs. I added in 2 big chests off into a storage area and added another plant inside. I then put in a painting to my home to fill up the empty, cold wall space, which made everything feel a lot more comfortable. Once all of this was done, it turned to nighttime, so I went outside to grab my bed. During this time, I gathered enough leather to make leather pants. I then laid in bed for the first night in my house, and I slept through until the morning with no problems. Waking up in this new home I built for myself felt very nice. It's a lot more cozy than the wet, cold tower I started off in, and it's far safer than the tent. I started the morning off by cooking the pork chops I had gathered a few days prior. Then I put whatever I didn't need into a chest so that I could have food for later. Today is a chore day. I moved all of my things over to the chests in my house, organizing everything so I don't ever get messy. One chest has my dirt, sand, gravel, and stone, while the other holds all of my woods. Next, I needed to flatten out some area to add a wall around my house. The house itself, of course, is very safe, but I need more secure land around my base that I can have control of. Somewhere I can guarantee nothing can hurt me. So I gathered and placed dirt in order to make way for the wall I want to put in tomorrow. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to start working on my wall right away since I was running low on cobblestone. So I wanted to go out and find a place to use as a quarry to mine as much stone as I could. I found the perfect spot outside a cave by the water. The breeze from the ocean was perfect in keeping me cool while I mined, and to my luck, I was also able to find a good amount of iron as well. I mined enough stone to break my pickaxe and walked my way back to the house. On the way, I got some more leather and made myself a leather helmet, which puts me very close to having a full set of armor. Once I got home, I started putting up my wall. The cobblestone I think will be a good material to keep me safe from the outside world. I left myself enough space for a couple of things, the first of which is a small wheat field to get myself a replenishable food source to mix with my pork chops. The next thing I made space for was a mine. I left an area off the side of the cliff within the confines of my wall, so that I can put a pathway in and then a safe place for me to mine. As I finished off the walls, the sun set and I made my way back inside to sleep. Today, I wanted to start putting in my wheat farm, and the first step into doing that was putting in the water source. I figured a great way to have water pouring in would be a rock with a bit of a waterfall, so I gathered some stone and then put the rock in, mostly using cobblestone and some pressure plates. It looks pretty good. I then dug out a bit of a mini lake that would hydrate the ground around it, making it fertile for wheat. I had to go off into the distance over to the ocean in order to retrieve water in my new bucket. It takes a few minutes to get there and back, so by the time I got the water in, the sun started to set. I placed in some extra water sources to hydrate some more land, then went inside to sleep for the night. Since I already started work on the wheat farm, today I was able to put some seeds in. Since washing up in this world, I've only collected 4 seeds, so I won't be able to complete the whole thing. But thankfully over the course of these 17 days, I've collected some bones, which I was able to turn into bone meal to grow the wheat faster. After growing out my wheat, being careful not to trample it, I was able to fill out a nice amount of the farm. But once I ran out of bones, I had to find something else to do. So I put in paths from my house to the front gate and then to the wheat field. I also started on extending it to where the mine will be down the line. I went over to the tent to take a look at the house I've built, and it looks great. It's tough to build something, but after it's all said and done, you can take a look at the progress you've made and you can really appreciate what's been done. I took another look at the house from afar and I couldn't help but feel proud of what I've accomplished. I then got enough leather to make leather boots, and now I think I'm prepared to go out into the caves and mine. Since I felt confident enough to finally go into the mines today, I remembered that by the quarry there was a cave that I thought I could dip my toes into and hopefully find some materials. So I made my way over to the water and went in to explore. I was quickly attacked by a few spiders, but I took them out and went further into the cave. Thankfully it was rich with coal and iron, but of course, it was quite dangerous. I frequently had to fight mobs and realized that I didn't bring any food with me, so I needed to be extra careful. I explored the cave, going deeper and deeper, keeping an eye out for any dangers. This cave felt like it never ended, pathway upon pathway filled with coal and iron. Eventually, my pickaxe was about to break, so I made my way out of the mine into the dark night. There were dozens of mobs outside that chased me all the way back home, and thankfully I made it back with no problem. Bringing home my riches, I slid into bed and slept through the night. I'd like to continue making my path to where I'm putting my mine, but I'm almost out of gravel to put my pathway in. I threw the materials for my mining trip yesterday into my furnace, and while I waited for it to smelt, I expanded my wheat farm. Once everything was done, I made my first iron tools, an iron pickaxe and an iron shovel. I then made my way back over to the cave from yesterday. I essentially spent the whole day mining gravel with the iron shovel, to the point where I used the entire durability of the shovel on the trip. The cave today was safe. I brought food with me and got into very few fights. I even got some coal since all of my coal was put into the furnaces. When I got home it was night, so I went to sleep. Today I wanted to get my mine started. I've had my home up for a few days now, and I'm ready to start getting down into the depths of the world. To get ready, I put in the pathway over to the mine and then put up supports for the entrance. I then started digging inward. My plan is to have a small outpost room with chests, furnaces, and crafting tables to make sure I have everything I need in the mine shaft. So I mined in and put up more wooden supports to start off the room. Things take a while to dig, but not as long as they would if I was still stuck with stone tools. I mined until my iron pickaxe broke and then went to bed. Waking up, the first thing I wanted to do was get back into the mine shaft. I wanted to make sure that by the end of the day it would be close to functional, so I could go down into the depths of the world soon. I went over to the mine shaft, placed in some more supports, dug out more space, and put in the stone floor. I found an interesting way to have my furnaces and crafting benches. I put the furnaces in the floor and then put the crafting benches into the wood supports. By the end of the day, most things were done. I just need to put in the rest of the floor tomorrow and then add the chests, and then I'm ready to start mining. The first thing I did after getting up from bed was go outside and chop as much wood as I could until my axe broke. I then went into the mine and finished decorating the inside. I put in 2 large chests in each section of the mine and finished the floor. Once the floor was done, I started digging down. Hopefully the mine will get down to diamond level very soon, but for now, I was only able to find some iron. It was back into the mines today. I'm slowly making it closer to the core of the world. Mining is pretty tedious, but it's honest and meditative work. Down in the mines, there isn't much stimulus, so you're left with yourself and your thoughts. Hopefully by the end of tomorrow, I can make it to diamond level. Mining again, but today I knew it could make it all the way down to the bottom. I mined for the entire day, late into the night. I know I said that mining is like meditating, but eventually the mines get to you. It's dangerous. Like I said, I mined late into the night, and I did make it down to diamond level, but by the time I made it there, I needed to get out. So I don't know what switched with me. I think I've been in the caves too much. I need a break. I haven't had the opportunity to rest and appreciate the world around me. So today, I wanted to take it easy. I went for a walk. A walk around nature. I made my way toward the ocean and took a long walk along the beach. During my travels, I found some clay and collected that. I walked around the shore and I made my way over to the destroyed tower that kept me safe during my first few days. It made me appreciate all I'd done to get to this point. I remembered the fear I felt as the rain poured down on the barely standing tower. I walked back home and decided that tonight I'd sit at the campfire. So as the sun started to go down, I went over and lit it up. I took the time to look up at the stars. The fire simmered out, and I went home and went to sleep. After my break yesterday, I felt refreshed. I thought it would be okay to head back into the mine shaft to get some more work done. I've made it all the way to the elevation I want to be at, so now it was just a matter of figuring out the best way for me to set it up. I decided that for the best efficiency, I would make doors every 2 blocks that would be each individual strip mine. I spent the entire day digging this main corridor to a point where I could figure out how it would look. And day 27 is much of the same, but instead of mining further away, I decided to do the decorating. I ripped out the entire floor while I smelted stone up at the top of the mine shaft. The stone was used to make stone slabs, which I used as the flooring for the mine shaft. This way, when I have many different mines in many different directions, I'll have an easy way to identify when I've made it back to the staircase. This process really does take a long time, the smelting of stone being the longest task. So putting in the floor took the entire day, but I can rest easy knowing that tomorrow I can finally start putting the mine to use and maybe find some more valuable materials. So back into the mines it was, and I made real use of the mine shaft rather than just building it up. I mined in a straight line for quite a while, finding mostly stone and the odd piece of iron or coal, and eventually I made it into a cave. I was immediately attacked by a zombie, which broke almost all of my leather armor, leaving me vulnerable. But I decided to persist regardless. In the cave, I found a new material, gold, but other than that, there was some coal and iron. I mined until the cave ran dry and then headed back home for the day. In the end, I brought back 10 iron, 4 gold, and 36 coal. The first thing I did when I woke up the next day was use my iron to replace the leather armor that was ruined yesterday. I made a full set, including a pair of leggings which hadn't broken yet. After a day of mining though, I wanted to get some fresh air above, so I started my day by gathering wood from some large trees near the house. The act of chopping the wood feels nice, being out in the world above after being cooped underground for a while. I really want to find some sugar cane, but after a long walk I wasn't able to find any, so soon I think I'll have to go out on a longer adventure to find some. But my walk wasn't all for nothing. I was able to gather some more food and leather to stock back up at home. I watched the sun set through the window in the attic of my house. It was nice. When I woke up, I went back into the mines. Since I now had iron armor, I was much better prepared for any dangers that could sneak up on me, so I felt a little more comfortable going into the caves. I dug out further using the strip mine from the other day. I kept digging forward the entire time, once again finding what scraps the mines were willing to give me. I was a bit more lucky today, finding more iron, gold, coal, and redstone. I think that it's finally time to put in a new building in my little homestead. I have a place to live and store things that I've gathered along my adventures, but I need somewhere to store and chop down wood. So I went off to the side of my house and cleared out some space for me to put a lumber chopping area. I took down some trees and flattened the ground to make room for the new building. I started to put up a frame using wood logs, and then I got the shape of the roof in before the sun went down and I went to bed. In the morning, I went back out to finish the lumber yard. I started off with the roof, then moved on to putting in the back wall, a fence to protect my chest area, and that was about it for the day. This place is looking pretty nice, but I'm going to need to do a lot of decorating before I consider it done, so that's what I did the next day. I added in a few things. A couple of supports to hold up some logs, railways leading to the front of the mill, and some wood piles to really show off that this is lumber storage. After that, I put in the floor inside the storage section and started digging out the ground around the building so that I could put in the floor section there. On day 34, I continued digging out the grass around the lumber yard, which used up an entire iron shovel. I then put in gravel, stone, and dirt. This took up the entire day, but it works out well because everything looks nice, and the ground really differentiates this area and lets you know it's a work zone. Since I had been doing a lot of building recently, I wanted to get back in the mines today, so I used up a lot of the iron I had left to make a few pickaxes and went into the mine shaft. I went into a new pathway and dug around for a while until I found myself in a cave. I found a few pieces of iron, gold, redstone, and coal. Eventually, I went around the corner in a lava pool and I saw something shining brightly. They were diamonds. I dug myself 4 diamonds, the first diamonds I found. And later on, I found another 2 diamonds. Today really was a successful mining day. I came home with 6 gold, 43 iron, 6 diamonds, and over a stack of redstone and coal. Because yesterday was so successful, I decided to try my luck in the caves once more today, so into the mines it was. There was still a section of the cave from yesterday I hadn't explored yet, so I made my way in trying to find some more goodies. Before too long, I found 4 diamonds and kept searching. This cave seemed to never end, pathway into pathway into pathway. I kept finding more materials and new sections to explore. Eventually, I came across something pretty interesting, a spider dungeon. I lit up the spawner so I wouldn't have spiders attacking me, then I looted the chest. Inside I found 5 iron, a piece of bread, a single gunpowder, and 2 saddles. Unfortunately, the rest of the day I didn't find anything interesting, but the mining trip was still very successful. I made it back with 4 diamonds, 49 iron, 13 gold, as well as a bunch of miscellaneous materials. Today, it was time to get back to work outside, in time to make my home look a little more pretty. The first thing I noticed was that the dirt in the lumberyard had turned to grass, so I replaced it back to dirt. And then I started making a pathway from the front of my wall to the lumber area. This is the same type of pathway I've been using everywhere, so really it was a simple task. Once the pathway was in for that, I decided to connect my house to the campsite right near the house. On day 38, I wanted to take things slow. I made very little progress. I did add in a couple of fences around the pathways to help shape everything out. They also gave me a place to put torches so that mobs won't spawn. After that, I tended to my wheat farm and then chopped some trees down for more wood. The next day though, I decided I was tired of only staying in this home area and I went out to do a bit of exploring. I brought a boat with me and went off towards the beach. I went down into the water and set sails for a little bit. It was relaxing being on the water. I came across some new sections of the world and found some sugarcane as well as some clay. After a while out on the water, I made it back to the shore and walked myself back home. The sugarcane and clay will definitely come in handy down the line. Next, I planted some trees and made it back home before the sun went down. On day 40, I did some more housework. I put in some water and planted my sugarcane. I then fixed some things over at the lumberyard. I placed in a waterfall by my wheat field and I went back out to the sugarcane when I heard something. I turned back around and I saw a wild dog, so I went back inside and grabbed my bones and went out to tame it. After 4 bones, he became my friend, my first and only friend in this world. Up until now, it was just me, all alone in this sandbox. Nothing but myself, my tools, mobs, and the occasional animal. But this dog was different. I now had a friend who I could share this empty world with. I named him Puff. I brought Puff inside and sat him down in the first floor, then I went upstairs to sleep for the day. On day 41, I wanted to get a new building in, somewhere I could grow a lot of sugarcane. So I gathered all the sand I had, some stone, and some other materials, and went over to the top of a little hill to start building. I had initially wanted to use pistons so I could have a button that would automatically push the sugarcane for me, but after experimenting all day, it wasn't working out for me. Redstone is a new concept, and I'm not very good at using it. I took down all of the pistons and redstone the next morning and decided to make everything a lot more manual. I grabbed some water from the house and put in a stream that could carry the sugarcane I broke over to me. I put in the sugarcane on both sides, some walls behind them, and then started thinking about how I was really going to make the building look. On day 43, I had started to really figure it out. I put in some wood pillars and used glass for the walls around the build. It was going to be a lot more like a greenhouse. I thought it would be a good idea to use glass so I could see when the sugarcane was grown from the outside. After putting in the beginning of the glass walls, I started on the floor, which would be stone slabs. Since stone slabs are expensive, I wasn't able to get the whole thing in today. I needed to wait for it to be smelted in my furnaces. Day 44, I worked more on the sugarcane farm. I put in some extra support on the wooden beams using trapdoors, put the rest of the floor, and then went to chop down a ton of wood for the roof of the farm. After I got wood logs, I placed them on top of the glass walls. After I started to put in the wooden roof, I tore it down because I didn't like how it looked. I then went to bed and called it a day. For the start of day 45, I wanted to take a break from all of the building and do some terraforming to the land around the sugarcane farm. I wanted the farm to only be accessible from the pathway to the lumberyard, so I created a little cliff wall off to the side. This makes it so that I'm forced to use the pathways to get around from building to building, adding some extra immersion into my home. After the cliff was in, I added in the back wall of the sugarcane farm, a couple of chests to store sugarcane, some extra supports, and finally a small portion of the glass roof. Since I ran out of glass though, I would probably have to finish it off tomorrow. So that's exactly what I did. I started off by adding a pathway connecting the farm to my lumber yard while glass melted in the furnace. Then after, I filled in the rest of the roof. That took up pretty much the entire day, since waiting for glass to smelt takes quite a long time. but the farm is pretty efficient and it looks great. I'm a big fan of how all of this worked out. Now that the sugarcane farm is all done, I had the time to think about what I wanted to do with the little cliff area next to it, and I knew exactly what to build. Everyone likes a shady place to read, so I decided I was going to build a tree and a place to sit right on the edge of that cliff. I made some shears, gathered a ton of leaves and wood, and got to building a custom tree. I placed in the trunk and branches, then started to fill everything in with the leaves. After I was satisfied with how the tree looked, I put in a little bench I could sit at and called it a day. After spending the last good chunk of days building and decorating my home, it was time to once again go back into the mines and try to find some materials. I made some pickaxes and torches and made my way down to the mine shaft. I used one of my already mined out pathways and decided to extend it out further. I quickly found a cluster of diamonds, 8 to be exact. We're now really starting to have a lot of diamonds back home. Hopefully enough that soon I'll be able to make myself diamond tools and armor. After a while longer of digging, I found myself in another cave, which had another 7 diamonds for me to collect. And that was mostly it for the rest of the day. I found some coal and iron, but nothing too monumental after those last 7 diamonds. Which, by the way, brings us up to a total of 25 diamonds at home. On day 49, I really wanted to make sure I had enough sand stored up in case we ever need it for a build one day, for glass or sandstone or any sand items. So I used a lot of my iron to make a whole bunch of iron shovels and went off to the beach area. I found a spot that was a bit out of the way and started clearing out a bunch of sand. I really did mine a lot of sand. Around 12 stacks if we're being specific. I also mined over 3 stacks of sandstone, and then it got dark. So I had to make my way back home through the mob-infested land and stored all of my sand in my chest in the mine shaft. We are now 50 days into this world, and really, I wanted to take it slow and appreciate everything I had made myself up until this point. So I just put in a path to the reading tree and then walked around for a bit. After doing essentially nothing yesterday, I wanted to make some progress today. Ever since I created my mine shaft, I always imagined that there would be a rail system in place so that I could go up and down the shaft using a minecart. So I smelted all of my iron and gold, made some rails, and started to place them in. I started by breaking the middle column of stairs out to make room for the rails. The powered rails were giving me some issues when I was installing them, but eventually I figured it out and made it work. But the process took a long time and I wasn't able to finish by the end of the day. So on day 52, that's pretty much what I planned on doing. But I came across a slight problem. I didn't have enough gold to place all of the powered rails. So I did what I could and then went into the mines to find some gold ore. I mined the entirety of the day away and nothing. I was unable to find the gold that I needed. Mining gets tedious all alone underground, and I was hoping to find that little bit of gold I needed quickly, but I wasn't able to. So back down again it was on day 53. I prayed to find gold quickly today. Thankfully, after just a few minutes of mining, I came across a lava pit, and in it was some gold. Just a few pieces, but that would be enough for me to finish the railway. I decided to spend the rest of the day down here since I had already committed to mining. In addition to the gold, I found a good amount of iron and 8 more diamonds. Finally, after working on this mineshaft project for a few days, I could finish getting the rail system in. I placed in the last few rails and decided to give it a ride. This was much faster than going up and down every time I wanted to mine. It would save a lot of time and therefore allows me to get just a little bit more mining in before I need to rest. After that was done, I wanted to get some time in the sun. For the rest of the day, I tended to my wheat farm, sugarcane farm, and chopped down some wood. The reason I finished the day by chopping down wood was because on day 55, I wanted to start putting in a few new buildings. Walking around yesterday, I came up with an idea. Since the world I'm in is so dangerous and it's hard to tell whether it's safe to go out or not, I wanted to put in a set of watchtowers on each corner of my area. There are 4 great hills that are elevated up and would make a perfect spot to put those in. I figured I'd start with the closest of the 4, since it was the simplest area to access. I dug out some dirt, making a better platform for me to build upon, and then started getting the foundation in. It's pretty simple, a wood log frame and stone walls, but by nightfall I was only able to put in those 4 walls. The next day, though, is where I started to make better progress on the tower. I built it up another floor higher, filling in the walls with stone and cobblestone. By the end of the day, I had put in a log wood platform up at the top, and put in more supports for the roof, as well as a guardrail to make sure I don't fall down. I wasn't super happy with the way the walls looked on the outside, so I spent some time trying to find a design I was happy with. After a couple of tries, I settled on one that I think looks pretty alright. A few wood blocks, stairs, and then some fences that drape down a little bit. Then after I was done with that, I started to get the roof on top, but night came and I ran out of stairs. The next day, I finished off the rest of the roof. It slants up using wood stairs, then at the peak uses a slab block. I also filled in the underside of the stairs with wood planks to make sure that there was enough depth. It's looking a lot better with the roof on and design on the walls. I cleared out some trees so I could see what the tower looked like from afar, and I'm liking it a lot. The last step before the tower is all finished is going to be putting in a pathway that leads up to it. Today, I needed to make sure that the terrain had enough room for that. I thought it would be cool to have the tower be on the edge of a cliff, so I dug out a whole bunch of dirt below it and then decorated it slightly to make sure it looked nice. After that, I did some terraforming to make sure that everything blended in with the rest of the terrain, so tomorrow I can start to get the pathways in. Putting the pathways in ended up being pretty easy. I made it simple for myself because of the work I did yesterday. I just dug out the ground and replaced it with gravel and stone. One pathway leads from the campground and out behind the sugarcane farm. The other pathway I put in wraps around the side of the sugarcane farm, and they both connect. This makes it so that the area around my home is more cohesive and feels like it fits in all together. It got dark before I was able to finish up the pathway, so that's what I'll do tomorrow. And that's exactly what I did. I made sure that the terrain was good, I added in a stairwell, and then connected everything all the way to the top. Then I added in fences with torches to make sure the area was lit up at night, so hopefully I'm safe from mobs. When night fell, I went to the top of the tower to see the base, and I think it looks amazing. I love the aesthetic we have going on. There were still a couple of small things I needed to do before the tower was completely finished. I added in grass around the pathway to make things look more connected, and then finally added in the glass in the windows for the tower. I lastly added in a painting on the middle floor, just so it wasn't an empty room. But now we are completely done with this tower, and I think it's time to get something else done before we move on to the next one. It turns out that building the tower used up a large portion of the wood I stocked up on previously, and since I wanted to build an additional 3, I think that it's important to chop down as much wood as I can today. I went into the section next to my lumberyard and got to breaking down most of the trees. A lot of them were pretty big, so it took a while to do each one. Either way, it was nice to relax and not to have to worry about any plans today, like building towers, working on the mine shaft, or being in the mines. Speaking of the mine shaft, on day 64, I decided that it was time to bite the bullet and finally start the completion of the mine shaft. Right now, the walls are a mix of random blocks, and I wanted everything to look cohesive, so I dug out the walls on the right side of the stairwell and then decided to use stone slabs as the walls. This process is pretty time consuming and unfun, but in the end, I'm sure things will look a lot better. By the end of the day, I had filled in a fifth of the way down the stairwell. Then, I decided to keep working on the mine shaft. Really, it was much more of the same from yesterday. Smelting stone, turning it into slabs, and then placing them down. Thankfully, all of the hard work done today resulted in making it down to the bottom on one of our sides of the stairwell. So about half the work was done. I just needed to put in the other wall as well as leave space for torches. And the main goal on day 66 was to get those torches in, so that when I break down the other wall, the mine shaft doesn't fill with mobs. I left 2 high holes in the stone slabs that I would dig into and place torches in. I then blocked off the holes with fences, and things are starting to look nice with the torches in. Unfortunately, this took a really long time, so that was it for the day. Since we are now completely done with one side of the wall, it was time to move on to the other one. I once again dug the entirety of the wall down and started to place in stone slabs. At this point, I had become an expert at this, so it was going by a lot faster, which now makes us more than halfway done with this mineshaft project. But I will say, this mineshaft is really starting to get annoying. It feels like the past few days have taken an eternity, and I still wasn't done with it. The repetition of breaking and placing blocks in the same pattern was really starting to get to me. The only thing I could think about was the next thing I wanted to get done. But unfortunately, I still wasn't done today. I got the torches in for around 75% of the second wall and was determined to finish this tomorrow. On day 69, it was finally time to finish the project. I was getting sick of this mineshaft and wanted nothing more than to do some more building up on the surface. Thankfully, most of the work was done and I only had a few more torch areas to put in, which was finished up fairly quickly. After that, I replaced any ceiling blocks that weren't already stone into stone. I was able to take a minecart up and down, and now that everything is finished, it looks a lot better. And I would say it was worth the tedious process. I spent the rest of the day walking around the world, going up to the tower, and deciding what more I wanted to build. I then went into the sugarcane farm and tended to the sugarcane in there. On day 70, I wanted to get started on a new build in this world. While up in my tower yesterday, I'd come up with the idea to put in a well for myself right near the house. I figured I would need some wood, so I started the day chopping down some trees. Once I was done with that, I cleared out a nice patch of land next to my house that I felt was right for the well. I didn't have time to start building before the sun came down, so I decided I would go to bed and start working on the well in the morning. So that's what I started on when I got up. I placed in the circle outline for the well using cobblestone, and then I walked over to the lumber yard so I could add in some wood supports for the roof. I added a cross section in so that I could have a rope that led down into the water. Then I put in the water, which was a hard process, and I honestly would not recommend it. I started day 72 by putting the roof on top of the well. I used wood stairs in the center and outlined it with cobblestone. It looks a little off, but all in all, I think it's a nice addition to our home base. I finished off the rest of the day by putting in a little pathway that led from the main pathway. I think that the main goal for the foreseeable future is going to be to get the rest of the 3 watchtowers in. And I decided today I was going to start working on the next one. I decided to go to the hill behind my base that leads towards the ocean. I figured this one was important to put in next since it gave a good view of the backside of the house, and it was the easiest to get to. I dug out the platform that I'm going to build it on and filled in any blemishes in the land. I started to get the foundation down, but unfortunately night came before I was able to do too much. When I got up the next morning, I made my way back to the second tower and I started to build it up. All 4 of the towers are going to be identical, so this time around it should take me a lot less time to get the build all the way up. But I was hoping to get it built up to the lookout portion of the tower today, and then I was going to leave the roof and decorating for tomorrow. I ended up getting the second floor in, the lookout section, and was also able to decorate most of the outside before the end of the day. Once night came, I walked back home and went to bed. For day 75, all I had to do was get the roof in, which was a pretty easy process. This tower is actually tall enough that it cuts into the clouds, which is pretty neat. Once the roof was in, I was able to get a good look at the tower from below, and I think I picked a great place for it. It really stands tall above the rest of the area and fits right in. The next day, I knew I wanted to buckle in and get the last 2 towers in as soon as I could, so I planted down some trees since we are very low on wood again. While the trees started to grow, I decided to take a trip to the top of the second tower and get a good look at the land outside of our house, and then the land within our base. And it's pretty great to see that we still have so much space around this sort of perimeter I've given myself by putting in the towers. There's still space for all types of buildings and fields, and I'm excited for what more I can get in here. I cut down a couple of trees and then made my way to the site of the third tower. Luckily, there's an easy way to get up to it if we go around the outside of the mountain it's on, but I think that later on it would be cooler to have a staircase or tunnel system to get to the top, but this will do for now. I cleared out the space for the third tower, and once again, this area is going to have a great view of the base. By the time I was done with the terraforming, it was nighttime, so I went home. Once again, I'm doing work on the towers. Today, I wanted to see how quickly I'd be able to get one done, so I made my way up to the top and got right to building. Unfortunately, I was trying to build too fast and ended up messing up the dimensions of the house, but eventually, I figured it out and kept going. And even with that little mishap, I got enough done to only need to put in the roof tomorrow. Now that I've memorized how to build these, it'll only get quicker and quicker. I got the roof on the next morning with no problem whatsoever. It was a fairly quick process. Once I was done, I got a glimpse of the tower ruins from the start of this journey. It felt like I had walked so far away before I settled down in this area, but it turns out we didn't go far at all. After taking the time to look around, I went up to the top where the final lookout tower is going to go, so I cleared out the space for it. This one starts already up in the clouds, which means that this is as tall as it can really get. The night came and it started raining, so I head back home to sleep. This tower building process is pretty repetitive, but honestly, it is relaxing. Today, I was able to get the whole tower in, minus the roof, before night came. At this point, we are so high up that it was getting dangerous. If I were to fall, I may not survive, so I had to be extra careful. On day 80, I did the decorations in the roof for the tower. It turns out that the roof is exactly at maximum height. I can't build any higher than where it stops, which makes me lucky because if this was 1 block higher, I would have had to tear down the whole thing and start again. By nightfall, the tower was finished, which meant that this project was done and we could move on to something else. After the towers, I realized I was out of a lot of resources like stone, so I wanted to get into the mines again. I started digging and ran into a cave with water, but I plugged that up so I could keep going. Eventually, I found a cave which had a lot for me to grab: diamonds, gold, iron, and coal, which made this mining trip extremely successful resources-wise. The cave I dug into seemed to go on forever, but I wasn't prepared to go into some of the parts of the cave since I was low on food, so I made my way back home with my riches. I was in the mines for so long long that by the time I made it back to the surface, it was already the next day. I mentioned that I was low on food, so I wanted to spend the day going out in search for pigs. I ran around all day, and at first, I was really unlucky. Pigs were rare, and when I would find them, they wouldn't drop anything. But eventually, I found a group of pigs which were very generous with their drops. By the end of the day, I had gotten a decent amount of food, but not enough to feel satisfied. So for now, we are okay, and I'll keep my eyes open for pigs more often. I started off day 83 by cooking our food from yesterday to stock in my chest. Then I went out and planted trees since we're desperately low on wood. I spent this day chopping down what trees I could and stocking up on a bit more food. And day 84 was much of the same, waiting for trees to grow and then chopping them down so I could stock up on wood. While walking around, I decided I needed to come up with a plan for the next few days as I was starting to run out of ideas on what to do. Thankfully, inspiration struck. I realized that I need some sort of shed to store tools for easy access. I needed somewhere I could go to keep large amounts of tools that I could walk to whenever I needed anything. I figured the best place to do this was at this small area behind the lumberyard. I wanted the tool shed to be tiny so it fit perfectly tucked away here. It really is a small place, and it's 2x3 on the inside. It has only enough space for a chest and crafting table. It has a small slanted roof and some windows to be able to see out of. This thing is tiny, but that's the purpose. I went home and used a bunch of iron to fill that chest. 2 rows of tools for each tool type: pickaxe, axes, and shovels. I think that eventually I'll build an armory for things like swords and armor, but this is just for tools. On day 86, I put in a small pathway from the lumberyard to the shed, and then chopped down all the trees that had grown around the area. I also added in paintings to each of the 3 towers that were missing them for decorations. I wanted to put the tool shed into use on day 87, so I went over, stocked up on iron pickaxes, then went back into the mines. I took the same path as I did the other day, and actually explored the rest of the large cave I found. As it turns out, I had already uncovered most of it, except for one small area. Thankfully, I did find some good loot, but I went back into the mine shaft, which quickly led me into another cave. In this one, I didn't find much though. Later in the trip, I did find a vein of diamonds, which was nice. I spent day 88 chopping down more trees because I had an idea for another build I wanted to put in. It took up the entire day to chop down these trees, since most of them were larger ones with a lot of branches, but soon we will have enough wood for my project. The project I had in mind was to put a windmill up on the hill behind the lumberyard. I want to turn the surrounding section into a sort of industrial zone. When I put buildings into my home, I want to make sure they serve a purpose and aren't just empty buildings with no use. For example, the lumberyard stores wood, the sugarcane farm stores sugarcane, the towers serve as a lookout to survey the land as well as a place to go and look at my land for building inspiration. The windmill is here to store wheat when eventually I put a large field in somewhere. So I started off by flattening the area and then getting the foundation in. For this build, I'm using the same materials as a lot of the other builds: wood and stone. I was able to get a bit done before nightfall, but there's still a lot of work to do. So on day 90, I continued to build. I added in a section off to the side which could serve as more storage for the windmill. I ended up focusing mostly on this part today, building and putting in the roof for the extra section. After that, it was time to continue working on the actual windmill portion. I built up a few more blocks, put the roof on, and then took a look at how it was looking from the ground. It looks a little funny without the actual windmill blades on the front, so that's the next goal. I went home to get fences and wool, and then started to build in the blades. Unfortunately, I was 4 wool short and wasn't going to go out at night to search for sheep. So for now, this is what the windmill looks like. You can get a good idea of its final state, and I'm really liking it. I went out to get wool and then finished off the final blade. I then decorated the window sections of the windmill. After that, I got to furnishing the inside. There's a long ladder that leads to the various floors, the top one being storage. Up here, there are a few chests that I can use to store wheat and bread, which should be more than enough storage than we will ever need. Now that the windmill is done, I've set myself a new goal. I want to get a stack of diamonds in my valuables chest. I currently had 56, so I was hoping that I could get the 8 I needed today. So I took myself back into the mines and dug out from a new pathway. I mined and I mined and I mined for a while, eventually finding coal, gold, and iron, but no diamonds. I found myself in a cave, still no diamonds. I mined for the entire day, and I went home gaining only 50 iron, a stack of coal, and a few gold. No diamonds. But I figured why not give it another shot, back in the mines again. I quickly found a cave, I dug over to it, and unfortunately in this cave, there was an extremely large amount of mobs. I tried to fight my way through what seemed to be an endless barrage of zombies, creepers, and skeletons. But eventually they broke all of my armor, I was out of food, and had too many close calls, so I retreated back to the strip mine. I dug normally the rest of the day, still finding no diamonds. On day 95, I decided to shift my goal. I was going to go back into the cave to find some obsidian since it's a block we haven't collected yet. And to do this, I finally decided to make a full set of diamond gear. A helmet, chest plate, leggings, and boots, and also a diamond pickaxe to mine the obsidian. I went into the mine shaft and went off into one of my already dug out sections until I found some obsidian. I mined up as much as I could before I got bored, since each block takes an eternity to mine. I don't know what it was, but something convinced me that I needed to dig a cave outside my house, near the well. I cleared out some ground and shaped what would be the entrance. The next day, I continued to dig out this cave. I started by finalizing the shape of what the entrance would be, and then started digging inwards into the mountain. I dug and I dug for a while, long enough that I carved out a surprisingly natural cave system that led to a dead end. I added some supports outside the cave entrance to make sure that the archway doesn't fall in, and then I went to bed. On day 97, I put in the pathway that led to this cave, and then I went inside to decorate it. I replaced some of the stone with cobblestone for better texture, and then went outside again. I noticed that I didn't have a good way to get to the windmill behind the lumberyard, so I put in a wood staircase. Right now, it looks bad and unnatural, but I have plans to make it look better. That was the goal for day 98, to make it look like this staircase belonged. The idea was to make it look like I carved out space in the hill and installed stairs to get up. So I terraformed the land around it. Something that looks like a cliff. I added this into both sides, and I have to say it looks pretty good. It completes the goal I was looking for. After that, I connected a pathway from the lumberyard to the staircase, and then from the top of the staircase to the two doors up top at the windmill. On day 99, I took the time to properly organize all of my chests. I made sure that my upstairs chests were all perfectly organized, and then I did the same for my downstairs chest. I put most of my wood-related things, including saplings in the lumberyard, and then things like seeds into the chest by my field outside the house. Eventually, I spotted a pink sheep off in the distance, something that I've never seen before. So I got my shears and went to go shear it for pink wool. I waited with it the rest of the day to see if it grew back, but it didn't before nightfall, so I went home to rest. It's now been 100 days since I washed up to shore on this land, and that is a pretty amazing milestone. 100 days represents 100 little stories. So I decided to not do anything today, and I took a walk around the world to take in the progress I had made. I climbed to the top of each of the 4 towers, getting a good look at everything I had built from each angle. The house, the tent in the fire pit, the well, the mine, the lumber storage and yard, the sugarcane farm, the custom tree, the windmill, and all of the 4 towers. They all looked great from each angle. When I was in the tallest tower, I took a look and saw the ruins that kept us sheltered at the beginning of this whole journey. So I decided to take a trip over to it so I could remember what it was like. I went inside and noticed I had actually left some things inside the chests and furnaces before I left. I walked all the way to the bottom of the mine left here, and then went all the way back to the top of the tower. Washing up here, I felt hopeless and alone, but now I had conquered this unknown world and built up a beautiful area for myself. With that, I decided the best thing to do was watch the sun set through the window of my home. As the sun fell behind the hills, something strange happened. Something possessed me to go into the cave I spontaneously dug a few days back. Once I got inside, I noticed that it seemed the cave narrowed some more, and it looked like it started to crumble. I don't know what it was, maybe it was instinct, but I placed the obsidian I dug previously into a rectangle and lit the center on fire. A portal, maybe one to another dimension, opened before my eyes. I'm not sure what to do with this, but it took everything out of me not to go into it tonight. So I went home, and I think I'll enter it tomorrow. Unfortunately, this book I'm writing in is on to its last page, so it seems I'll have to start a fresh one tomorrow. But I suppose this book finishing today is somewhat powerful. A nice bow, which was my first 100 days surviving in this world.